See. Yeah, I gotta get some other headphones.
Alrighty, we are here live right now, getting set up here. Oh, they saw your headphones fall out at the beginning. That's live on YouTube. That's immortalized, that moment of your earbuds falling out. I got the Apple brand. This is the only time I ever spring for name brand stuff is when it's Apple because it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful. It just fits in there nice and snug, you know.
Exactly.
It's
That's
really a quality
that's what I
product.
need. I don't know what I was thinking getting this.
Yeah. I even got an Apple brand phone charger cable for my car because when I drive, I need the phone charging all the time because I'm using the apps all day. And yeah, the other brand, like the generic brands, they fall out or they lose the charge.
Well, yeah. That's that's why the Chinese have enslaved the Uyghurs because they're very good at making that stuff, and
Yeah.
I just can't get that quality without the Chinese slave labor.
Well, the Uyghurs they work well under pressure. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Well, they're known for that. I think that's written about in the seventh book of the Qing Dynasty. How
Yeah.
great the Uyghurs are at making Apple headphones.
Yeah, this whole line of state of the art Apple products was foreshadowed in some of those texts. If you read
It
between the
really
lines,
was.
yeah,
Well, yeah, clearly because you have those, white budding lotus flowers, and clearly that's what they're referencing.
exactly. Alrighty, guys. So we have a little impromptu midweek stream. This is up on YouTube now. I'll probably put this up on the audio podcast later in the week. It'll be clipped for segments later. We have two main segments of the evening. Big news out of the heartland state of Kansas this week. So yesterday, August
Who
2nd, the
knew?
people, Kansas really impressed. I tweeted out, "Let's go Kansas." We got to get that hashtag going because the people of Kansas really shocked the world by voting overwhelmingly against a constitutional amendment, meaning to the state constitution, that would allow the legislature to restrict abortion. If that sounds like a mouthful, it's because it is. And it's not any kind of conspiracy theory, I don't think, to believe that it was made deliberately confusing. So let me just put that in very simple terms. There was a referendum brought to the people of Kansas on whether or not to keep abortion access in their state constitution. And the people of Kansas voted overwhelmingly to keep abortion access essentially codified in their state's constitution. And this was not a close vote. It was 51 voted pro-choice and 58 voted pro-choice and 41 voted anti-choice. That's how I'm describing the vote because it turns out voting no was voting yes on reproductive rights, so it gets very confusing. Basically,
I think what they didn't take into account, the people who put forward this ballot proposal, was the hell. Without legal abortion, I would have had to marry Merlene vote.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, right.
They didn't take that into account.
I mean,
I would have had to move into that trailer with her folks if we hadn't been able to get that abortion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, these kinds of issues just affect people in such a fundamental way that it's one thing to talk like a God-fearing Christian who wants to stop them baby killers from killing them babies. It's another thing when you actually have a chance to make these policies reality. This is what I said as soon as the SCOTUS opinion leaked, was that this could have the effect, believe it or not, of moderating the Republican Party in the long term. Obviously, that has not happened in the short term. But what happened in Kansas was the people of Kansas, deep red state Kansas, which voted for Donald Trump against Joe Biden 60-40. They saw Roe v. Wade overturned. They saw on the news that 10-year-old girls were having a hard time getting the care they needed after being raped. They saw on the news that there were 6-week bans now being put into place that were being upheld, whereas most people don't even know they're pregnant.
Mhm.
at 6 weeks, and they said, holy shit, we can't live like this. And the first
Mhm.
chance that any state had in the country to actually do a reality check when it comes to these kinds of policies voted overwhelmingly to keep abortion legal. And
Well,
who
did, well,
knew
did
Kansas would be the abortion capital of the heartland, but it is.
well, I heard when this came in, Joy Reid was in the Rainbow Room. She started throwing cocktail glasses. God damn it! This fucks the whole narrative about the red states.
Well, yeah, I mean, it
How am I going to
definitely.
go on the air and claim they all have one opinion, that they're all these backward troglodytes, Christian rednecks? This blows my segments for the next 7 shows.
Well, yeah, certainly does. Certainly does. I mean, it was to a point where, I mean, most of the counties in the state voted anti-choice because they're very rural counties. But all around, like, Topeka, Wichita, the cities, and even the surrounding suburbs of those cities voted overwhelmingly to keep reproductive care codified in the state constitution. Now, when we say codified in the state constitution, we don't mean that the founders of Kansas wrote this into the Constitution whenever Kansas became a state. I don't know, mid 1800s, early 1800s, whenever that was. What happened was the Supreme Court of Kansas ruled in 2019 that the state constitution guaranteed reproductive rights. And so this was a ballot measure to amend the Constitution to explicitly strip that protection, which would allow the state legislature, which is, of course, overwhelmingly Republican, to then pass a law similar to the kinds of laws that surrounding states like Texas, Missouri, Oklahoma have already passed. And the people said, no, we're not going for that. And Michael Moore made a great point. He put out a sort of short form podcast in response to this. And this was exactly what I was thinking, because he talked about how the Democrats have been so utterly useless in defending reproductive care. And this was an instance where it just fell to the people to vote yes or no. They weren't voting for elected officials to go to bat for them to defend abortion rights. This was a ballot measure. This was a referendum. You could either have reproductive rights in your state or you can't, and the people voted overwhelmingly for them. And so, that is a very, very inspiring thing, and it was a great victory for Kansas and, a real good sign that people in this country are willing and ready to, fight back against this, because it has to be fought back against, and the people have to do it themselves. One other point that I'll make here is that this was put to the ballot during the primary date, not the November general election date, which is very unusual, but that was done deliberately because Republicans
get the
figured
most activist people. Right?
Exactly. And Republicans thought that since there are way more Republicans in the state of Kansas than there are Democrats, that Republican turnout on primary day is going to be way higher because a lot more people vote in Republican primaries in Kansas than in Democratic primaries. What they weren't counting on, and the other really fascinating thing here, is that because this was a ballot measure, independents could go and vote for this referendum. And the independent vote swayed extremely heavily for reproductive rights. And so that was the one thing they did not think of, and it bit them in the ass. And good on it.
In the end, it's one of those things that it was a shocking result, but it makes total sense in hindsight. The majority of people, including Republicans, are pro-choice. So, of course, nobody wants this. It is a real problem for the Republicans. They are very much the dog that caught the car. Right. You pushed it and you pushed it and you finally got it. Now you've actually done just about the only thing that might be able to rescue the repulsive Democrats from themselves.
Right. Exactly. I mean, this could be a situation where, people just default to voting Democrat because they're the pro-choice option.
Right. Right.
and it could have nothing to do with the fact that, whatever their record is on the issue and things like that. It could swing a lot of statewide races to the Democrats' favor. And this is why I've said over and over again, it's going to swing statewide races, not so much House races, because the effect that this is going to have is it's going to juice Democratic turnout in Democratic strongholds, which are major cities. So in this case, if you look at a map, you'll see the western part of the state, which is all rural, voted overwhelmingly pro-life. And then Topeka, Wichita, and like those Kansas City suburbs on the far eastern part of the state voted no. And so the reason that helps you statewide is because obviously in a statewide race, and not that there are any blue districts in Kansas, I don't think, but if we take this and put this in another state just to make it a little bit easier for people to understand, like in Philadelphia, if you juice turnout in Philadelphia, that really helps you win the Pennsylvania governor's race and the Pennsylvania Senate race.
Right.
Juice turnout in Philadelphia doesn't help the House race in the western part of the state. Right. So it's not that Democrats don't affect House races, but the House races that Democrats are going to, or the places rather, where Democratic turnout is going to be juiced because of Roe versus Wade, are already in safe blue districts.
Right.
And so that will not affect a House race in a purple area, 150 miles outside of Philly or Pittsburgh or any of these places. And so it's less likely to help them in the House. That's not to say it won't help them at all, because purple voters are purple voters. Some of them are going to be motivated by this, right? But it's not going to help them nearly as much. In statewide races, as you saw in Kansas, these Democratic stronghold areas, not that, Topeka is a bastion of, left-wing sentiment, but as Kansas goes, it's fairly liberal. They brought this home. Topeka, Wichita, Kansas City suburbs. That's where it happened.
Yeah, it's it'll be very interesting to see if this holds across the country. As our frequent listeners know, I may move to the great state of Louisiana next year. And I've been following the newspapers in Louisiana for a year, to just get a sense of what goes on there locally. And, it's a weird state because you have New Orleans and then you have Louisiana.
Well, yeah, exactly.
So this keeps going back and forth. They've started a suit there arguing that the law violates the state constitution, not on the grounds that they had with Kansas, but that it's too vague. It's not clear when a doctor can perform it, that the law is not clear about life of the mother situations, that it's too vague about that. So a judge suspended the outlawing abortion, and now has reinstated it. So now it's banned again, and now they're appealing again. He said the case was introduced in the wrong venue. I think they have to reintroduce it. But this is going to play out. If that happened in Kansas, I suspect it would happen pretty much anywhere that you put it to a vote. And that is going to be a problem for Republicans politically. I've been watching the conservative media try to spin this, and it's just not working. It's really not working. Like,
what are some of the things you heard? Because I haven't tuned into any of that since this happened.
They know it's an unpopular position. They're trying to give it look at this liberal idiot protester with their purple hair and their lib values. They're trying to give it that treatment. They're trying to tar it that way. They're trying to treat it the way they treat a story about a transgender woman winning a weightlifting contest, or liberals gone mad, liberals gone crazy, or owning the libs. Like, they're trying to paint it that way, but it doesn't work because the target is one that most people don't think is crazy. right?
Right,
It's
right,
not,
right.
it just doesn't play to be like, oh, and today this pro-choice activist introduced legislation to make abortion legal all the way up to 6 months.
Yeah, right.
Whoa.
Right.
Like it just doesn't work the way video of teachers telling all the children in the class that they're racially defined. You can get a lot of content out of that. But talking about the crazy pro-choice people, they're trying to do exactly the same thing, and it just doesn't work because it's not that you're not on the side of popular opinion here. You just sound stupid when you start trying to treat it that way.
Yeah, and this is also not the kind of thing that like exists mostly in people's imaginations, right? So like the specter of critical race theory is very powerful politically because it's this scary thing that, some people do encounter, but most people don't. Most people can just sort of picture in their head, oh my God,
There
imagine.
are very few schools you're going to go to where this is an issue.
Yeah,
There
right,
are certain
exactly.
districts where, yes, if you're in LA County, if you're in San Francisco County, if you're in New York City, you'd be hard pressed to find a lot of other places around the country where you're going to run
Right,
it.
exactly. So like where right-wing media is most popular, which is in red areas, this is really just something that exists in TV world, right? The idea that your child is going to be indoctrinated to
Right.
believe that because she's white, she is, this like oppressor. Um, that's something that like the average Fox News viewer only sees that and experiences that through Fox News. It
Right.
doesn't actually happen to their
Right.
kid.
Right.
Unwanted pregnancies happen to everybody.
Right.
Pregnancies
Exactly.
that maybe start
That's a
out
good point.
wanted and don't end up being wanted because of whatever life circumstance or an illness or whatever. This happens to everybody. This is not just some like TV culture war abstraction. And so that hits a little different, right? To the point where when it
Right.
comes to a vote, hey, do we want this option on the table? Yes or no? 60% of the people of Kansas are still going to vote yes.
Basically, to the best way to describe it is they're trying to use the ground that they've already built with their audience on owning the libs and hating the libs and liberal elites and putting this in that box.
Right.
And
exactly.
it just doesn't belong in that box. This is not a liberal elite thing. This is not a rarefied opinion of college educated people. This is a broad opinion held by an overwhelming majority of the American public, including people who consider themselves Republican and conservative.
Yeah, I mean, look, if anything, I think the Republican base, as it's currently constituted now, which is a more working class base, has more more of a dog in this fight in a way because the upper middle class sort of suburban Democrat base they're concentrated in blue states where their reproductive rights are not going to be threatened, and even if they were, they have the resources to go get taken care of, right? You know what I mean? Whereas the poor schmucks in like West Virginia, living in trailers, they find themselves, in a situation where they need an abortion and can't get one. That could be very, very dangerous, and it can be devastating to them. So they have even more reason to take this issue seriously.
Hey, man, a lot of the blue staters have gone to Texas and Florida.
That's true.
So, it is relevant to them. Texas already banned it. Florida, they haven't yet, right? What have they done down there? You got so many you got so many Jews from New York down there. Like, what?
It's going to be tough. I mean, Florida's still a swing state.
Right.
Even though it's trended red, it's a 55-45, situation. It's not a 60-40, 70-30 type thing,
Right.
Then again, neither is Texas.
Neither is Texas,
but for some reason, Texas, I think Texas is a little bit more solidly red than Florida. But
more than Florida, but
yeah.
I don't think it's more than 60-40.
Well, the thing about Texas, too, is just the size of it makes this a very severe issue. Because, I mean, if you live in Austin, Texas, you know, you're going to have to get on a plane to get out of the state if you need an abortion, right? Or it's going to be whatever, a 6-hour ride. That's South Central Texas. I've driven across Texas before.
Me too.
Feels like you're never going to get out of fucking Texas.
You're there forever.
Yeah.
That Ohio is another one.
We were driving cross country from LA back to New York, and we went the southern route, and we had a mishap where we ended up in Texas longer than we should because we had car problems, which I can talk about on another show because it's a fascinating story in and of itself. But it's a personal story, so I won't waste the audience's time with that. But anyway, by the time that ordeal was over, we were so just over the whole trip. We just wanted to get back home, but we were in El Paso. And it took so long to drive through that state that when we crossed the Arkansas state border, we were like, oh, thank God we're almost home. Meanwhile, we're still in Arkansas. Right. We still got half the country to drive across. But it's like, that's how big Texas is. Yeah.
Yeah, but with all these blue staters living in those places, I mean, it's going to become a serious issue for them. Yes, they have the means to get out of the state, but you got like Texas in particular is one of those states that wants to make it illegal to go out of state.
Well, yeah, that's
which
the
is
thing.
Just like, so incredibly mean-spirited.
It's incredible, you know, that
leave these people the fuck alone. Jesus Christ, man.
Well, this is, I mean, look, the Supreme Court, I mean, one of the problem with the court, and I believe Sotomayor even made this point explicitly a while back, or as one of the liberal justices did, that the court does not take seriously this particular court. It's not even so much that they're ideological, because, look, they, I mean, some of them are, obviously, but, look, they struck down the challenge to the ACA. They upheld Obamacare, right? I mean, if they were just, like, Republican stooges, they would just, you know, check all the boxes and just, you know, vote the way our team wants them to vote all the time. A big problem, though, is that they seem to think of their jobs as these like academic interpreters of the Constitution with very little regard for how their rulings will actually affect life in the country. Like they don't seem to grapple at all with the real world consequences of their rulings. This to them is just an academic exercise about, when something comes to them, does this jibe with the text of the Constitution or does it not? If we are, if we believe in a strict interpretation of the Constitution, then we're going to, rule in that way. With no regard for like what they're ruling, for how the way they rule is going to affect the social fabric of the country. And I believe I forget who it was, but I think it was one of the liberal justices argued that, like, yes, we are a court. Yes, we have to be impartial, but we're also like a cog in this democratic machine. And we do have to consider the impact of our rulings on the social fabric of the country, because if we don't, then this whole democratic structure is going to fall apart anyway. So we're not actually upholding the Constitution by ruling in ways that just open up the doors for these, just like you said, just vicious, mean-spirited motherfuckers to just go after people in this way where you can't leave the state to get, the care that you need. Doctors are going to be charged with murder for performing certain operations, which leads them to then deny people care even if they're not seeking abortion.
Sure, who wants to risk it?
Because who wants to be implicated and who wants to risk it, right? Some woman came in having a miscarriage. I think this was in Alabama, and she couldn't get treated because the doctor wasn't sure if she was actually having a miscarriage and just wanted treatment to save her, or if she just wanted the fetus out of her, right? And so he's like, he didn't know, and he didn't want to touch it because he didn't want to open himself up to that risk. And so, it's just a nightmare. It's just a nightmare. And yes, I mean, the court should absolutely, act with some amount of, they should be somewhat prudent about this, about like, okay, what is the actual effect that these rulings are going to have? And it doesn't seem to cross their minds at all.
You know what's interesting? If you push that far enough, you would give people grounds to go to Canada and claim asylum.
Well, Canada's already pretty much hinted at that. I mean, they haven't gone that far.
But, hey, they're going to prosecute me if I return to my state because I came here to have an abortion.
Well, I think Canada has already said something to that effect. Not that we'll like take you in and you can live here, but that like, if you can't get, reproductive care where you are, like if you're in like North Dakota, which is a border state, and I think they're one of the states that has just gone crazy with these like, trigger laws and things like that. Then like you can come get what you need and we won't say anything,
Yeah, but I'm saying there could be legal grounds to claim political asylum for women who get an abortion in Canada. If you have reason to believe you're going to be persecuted when you go back, that they're going to put you in jail, you could try to claim asylum.
That's interesting. Interesting. All right, let's do our second segment of the evening.
A way to get into Canada without getting married.
Yeah, right there. There you go. Exactly. All right, let's do our second segment of the evening here. Let me just cue this video up here. Alrighty, folks. So our second segment of the night, of course, InfoWars founder and star Alex Jones is standing trial in the defamation suit brought against him by the parents of the children who were killed at the Sandy Hook shooting back in 2012. And it's looking very, very bad for him and for InfoWars. It looks like they are going to get the shit suit out of them, and that the judge is going to rule that he pays more money than he can afford to pay, which means InfoWars, their days might very well be numbered. But the case...
What was it, TMZ that Hulk Hogan took down?
Oh,
Gawker.
yeah. I forget.
Gawker. It was Gawker, right?
Gawker, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, it was Gawker.
Yeah. So you could be looking at something like that. And today, though, the case took a very interesting turn where it could potentially have transitioned from a civil case into a criminal case. Not that it will be the same case, obviously, but you know what I mean. Because Alex Jones's lawyer apparently slipped up and sent Alex Jones's phone records to the opposing counsel by accident. And so on those phone records were some text messages that I guess Alex Jones denied ever sending, testified under oath during his deposition that he had no knowledge of. And so let's watch this exchange right here. This is quite something.
Mr. Jones, you know how an iPhone works, right? You've had iPhone text messaging for several years now.
Yeah.
What does it mean if the messages are in blue? Whose messages are those? Whose phone is this taken from?
I don't know whose phone's taken from. I mean, I turned the phone over and said, take the stuff off.
Can I have you look in the very bottom below the very bottom left corner? Is that your phone number?
Yes. So you did get my text messages. And it said you didn't. Nice trick.
Yes, Mr. Jones.
Oh.
Indeed. You didn't give this text message to me. You don't know where this came from. Do you know where I got this?
No.
Mr. Jones, did you know that 12 days ago, your attorneys messed up and sent me an entire digital copy of your entire cell phone with every text message you've sent for the past 2 years, and when informed, did not take any steps to identify it as privileged or protect it in any way. And as of 2 days ago, it fell free and clear into my possession. And that is how I know you lied to me when you said you didn't have text messages about Sandy Hook. Did you know that?
I told you the truth. This is your Perry Mason moment. I gave them my phone, and then,
Mr. Jones, you need to answer the question.
No,
Did you know this happened?
no, I didn't know this happened, but I mean, I told you, I gave them the phone over.
But just
And you
answer the
said,
question.
you said in your deposition, you searched your phone. You said you pulled down the text, did the search function for Sandy Hook. That's what you said, Mr. Jones, correct?
And I had several different phones with this number, but I did, yeah. Well, of course, I mean, that's why you got it.
No, Mr. Jones, that's not what happened.
My lawyer sent it to you, but I'm hiding it. Okay.
Mr. Jones,
Mr.
please just answer questions. There's no question. Mr. Bankston also only asks questions.
Sure.
That looks like a guy who's pretty fucked.
Well, no, it's the best thing that could happen to him because he's going to get sued for millions of dollars, and he can get that from his lawyer now.
Well, that's the thing. I mean,
You know,
he could
what
sue-
kind of lawsuit his lawyer just opened himself up to,
Yeah, I mean, he could.
and he
could
didn't even
sue the lawyer.
claim it as privileged before it wound up in open court. Come on, man. That guy. I mean, just in terms of how our system is supposed to work, that guy should be disbarred. That is fucking gross incompetence.
Unless he sent it to him knowing that this would happen and that this could help get Jones some of the money back that he's going to lose in this defamation suit. In other words, this phone leak may have been a false flag committed by Alex Jones and his
sure.
lawyer. And maybe they
maybe.
work something
Or
out.
by Alex Jones. That would be the only way it would make sense.
Yeah. Well, they
So
could
you
have.
sue the lawyer.
So he could sue the lawyer, right?
Yeah.
So that he could sue the lawyer. Yeah.
But seriously, I mean, is he going to fire this guy now? Like, how do you- that is incredible. Not only that happened, but that he didn't claim it as privileged.
No, but
What's up
I mean,
with
look,
that?
he can go after the lawyer. He can go after the lawyer, and there may be some legal protection that he can claim if his
he
lawyer.
can probably move for a mistrial, can he?
Well, I don't think he can move for a mistrial in the defamation case. First of all, he's already been found liable for defamation. The only question now is how much is he going to have to pay out?
Is that what they're? Is that what
right.
this is? This is the penalty
Yeah.
case.
Right. Yes.
okay.
Yeah. He's already admitted to that. But the other thing that this potentially opens him up to is criminal prosecution for lying under oath. I mean, he could have very well perjured himself when he said that he did not send any texts, regarding.
It's
the Sandy Hook
hard. It's
shooting.
hard to prove because you can always say that you forgot.
Well, perjury is extremely hard to prove. I mean, that's an extremely difficult case to prove, but Alex Jones is certainly on the establishment's shit list, right? I mean, if they were going to go after anybody on this, they would go after him. You're right. That's a notoriously difficult thing to prove, is that someone actually, deliberately lied under oath.
Right.
Because depending on what the when the contents of the text messages are, he could say, well, yeah, Sandy Hook came up in passing, but this wasn't in regards to the defamation trial. I mean, we don't know because we don't know what the text messages are. You couldn't tell from there.
He could just say he didn't remember.
He didn't remember. I mean,
And
that depends on how many.
You can't prove that he did.
It depends how many there are. I mean, if he's going back and forth forever
Come on,
about
man.
this,
Come on, man.
there's
That-
no
that guy-
way
that
that a
guy's
jury could.
always going on the air, fucking loaded on high balls, man.
Oh, you mean on the show?
Yeah. He's always coming on loaded. So
I mean, the thing about this, when it comes to Alex Jones, I mean, I've always had a bit of mixed views on Jones because I'll be honest with you, I happen to think the guy is an extraordinarily talented broadcaster. I actually think he's an extremely intelligent person. That doesn't mean his insights are good. It just means in just terms of like computing power of his brain is just phenomenal. I mean, the guy can talk for 4 hours, stream of consciousness, never hesitate, never stutter, never stammer, never have to restart, never says the same thing twice. His broadcasts were always chock full of information, right? Whatever you want to think. You could think it's bullshit information, but he would constantly introduce new facts and new stories and things. So he's just an extraordinarily entertaining person. And that's why, his website there has just completely blown up, to the point where they were taking in, upwards of $800,000 a day at certain points. And then that's the other thing, that the phone not only contained text messages, but contained financial documents and emails and things like that, proving that he was taking in a fuck ton of money, which could also complicate his bankruptcy claim, because the parent company, Free Speech, whatever it is, that owns InfoWars, which is Jones's company, filed for bankruptcy a few days ago. And if they can prove that there's all this money that they tried to move around at the last minute, based on the records from this phone, that could complicate that. So, yeah, I mean, he definitely could have a suit against the lawyer, but I think whatever negative consequences arise out of this are going to far outweigh that, because he could have just opened himself up to criminal prosecution, and his bankruptcy claim could be sort of complicated from this as well. And, you could tell from the look in his eye there that, I mean, he looked like a guy who had been caught. And just his sort of defense that he tried to sort of improv his way through there. Well, if you have the phone, it's because I have nothing to hide. But the guy explained very, very clearly, well, no, you guys didn't voluntarily give me the phone, at least not on purpose. Certainly Alex Jones didn't consent to giving him the phone. It's not as though, here's my phone, I'm an open book. No. In fact, it was the opposite. Sure. In fact, much of what was on that phone, it seems like Alex Jones denied existed in the first place. Now, just getting back to what I think about Alex Jones, like I said, extraordinarily entertaining, extraordinarily talented. And I think, what happened to Alex Jones is similar, and I know this is going to strike some people, not all people, as a very crude comparison, and I don't mean to compare them as similar, but I think they're similar in the same sense that, Joe Rogan sort of broadcast to this mass audience, and I think Joe Rogan, he's actually said as much, that sometimes he just speaks as if he's not being listened to by 11 million people. Like, sometimes it's difficult to actually grasp the actual influence that you're having on people when you grow to that, to at such an exponential rate. And I feel like that's a lot of what happened with Alex Jones, especially because I think so much of what he would traffic in is sort of like exaggerated theatrical metaphor. Like when Alex Jones called Hillary Clinton a demon and Barack Obama a demon, Obama went on stage at a rally saying, "Could you believe this? Alex Jones says I'm a demon."
That
and
was pretty good.
It's like, yeah, that guy do a fairly good Obama. But like my response, I remember watching the TV, and I remember thinking, well, he's right. You are a fucking demon. Like, you are figuratively a fucking demon. You and all these people, yeah, you're all fucking demons. You're not actually, inhuman beings that like escaped from hell, but you function as demons. That's how you function, right? And I believe that like Jones uses that kind of theatrical metaphor to great effect. I don't think he actually believes that they're physical demons. I don't believe his audience believes that they're physical demons, but this is like a fun thing. It's a fun kind of rapport that he built up with his audience that like, yeah, we're going to traffic in these over the top sort of theories and sort of express our views using this very over the top language. And yeah, a lot of what we say is not going to be literally physically true, but there's going to be a sort of essence at the core of it, a sort of like political ethos at the core of this, a sort of anti-establishment, like libertarian ethos that's going to come through. And we're all going to kind of sort of have this sort of understanding with each other in our world here as to what we're talking about. And he grew that brand extraordinarily well. The problem is, it's one thing to speak in those terms when you're calling Hillary Clinton a demon. It's another thing to speak in those terms when the target of this insanity are the grieving parents of children murdered in school. And that's someplace where you just can't go there. Like, you just fucking can't go there. And I think the guy is too big of an ego. He has too much invested in his brand of never backing down, the big Texan tough guy, to the point where once he went there, he just felt like he had to double down on it, to the point where he wasn't even calling off some just like abhorrent behavior, like his followers were harassing the parents of these kids. And like, you know, that's a situation where like that it's inexcusable not to put a stop to that if you are a showrunner and you know that people are taking what you're saying and going out and doing this. There's just no excuse to let it go on. And he did, and now he's facing the consequences for that.
Sure, he's getting what he deserves. You know, those of us, and we were among them, who were disturbed by his being removed from various platforms, always made the point it wasn't about Alex Jones, it was about the freedom of speech issue. And I think time has proven us right. We said today it's Alex Jones. Tomorrow it's going to be people that you like. Tomorrow it's going to be left broadcasters. And even though I don't like the way Dole is trying to get his numbers up, the YouTube community owes him a great debt of gratitude for doing a lengthy video showing what YouTube is doing to left broadcasters. And really, Jones was the beginning of that. It was the beginning of them basically hiding behind the phrase content moderation as a way of essentially banning free speech from these platforms. And once they did it, there's a direct line from Alex Jones to banning coverage of the Hunter Biden laptop, which turned out to be true, which affected a presidential election. I don't care if you feel good. Okay, but now we don't have freedom of speech. Now you are empowering these tech platforms because you bring this up to a lot of people on the left, and a lot of them, they don't want to say it that way, but they feel that the ends justified the means. But if you understand what the implications are and you understand the way that can be used against you, that is a line we can never cross, and we've crossed it.
Well, sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because...
And it started with Jones. Once they saw they could get away with it, well, why not David Dole?
But here's the really interesting thing.
Why not Jimmy Dore? Why not all these people we don't like?
One of the interesting things that was also revealed based on the findings of, you know, what was on that phone, going through some of the financial records, they actually found out that Alex Jones lied when he suggested, or when he outright said, that the YouTube ban, the Facebook ban, and the Twitter ban hurt his company's bottom line. The records actually showed that InfoWars earnings actually went up post-ban, which is what a lot of people were saying was going to happen, that he's going to get bigger, he's going to get richer because of this. Because now all of the traffic, he's not sharing any of his traffic with these tech giants anymore. It's all going to Infowars.com. So now if you want to watch one of his videos, you can't find it on YouTube where he's sharing the space with all these other content creators and YouTube itself, and getting a small percentage of ad revenue.
Subscription model at that
subscription, and also, you know, I mean, they make most of their money by hawking shit off the website, like the supplements and all that crap. So, you know, so once you get, so if you take YouTube off the table, okay, now whatever, if he's getting 50 million views a month on YouTube, which he's probably getting a lot more, I'm just pulling that out of my ass, I don't really know. But let's say it's 50 million viewers a month on YouTube. Okay, let's say you take him off YouTube. Let's say only his most devoted fans follow him to Infowars.com. Well, now you got 10 million viewers going to your website where they're seeing ads for your shit that you're marking up like 100%. They were, you know, making crazy profits on these, you know, fucking whatever, you know.
You can do that on YouTube also.
Testosterone supplements, shit like that.
You can sell products on YouTube.
Sure, you can, but it's not the same as going to your website where everything
Like, you don't have to
is
give
going
YouTube
right
a
to
cut
you.
on those things.
No, you don't give them a cut on those things, but there's less you can do because it's not your platform. Like, you send people to Infowars.com, everything there is going right to you.
Well, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's your
You
world.
control
It's
the experience. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, yeah, they made more money based on that, which is what a lot of people said would happen. And
Well,
sure enough, it did.
well, this is what happened with all these journalists who went to Substack. They
Yeah.
all even Greenwald, because The Intercept is notorious for the unusually high pay rate that their journalists get. So he didn't think he was going to make more money, but he's actually making more money. They're all making more money. Taibbi,
Yeah.
all these people, when they left Rolling Stone and The Intercept, they're making more money than they were before.
Yeah, because it goes directly to them. You know,
Right.
that's
Yeah.
it. You know, you run it, it's $5 a month. Substack gets $1 of that per month, you know, and you get $4 a month. So, you know, you have tens of thousands of paid subscribers, as, you know, Greenwald and Taibbi both do. Yeah, I mean, you're doing extremely well. Let's see. Shouting about the kid shooting being a hoax with a big red face to millions of people gives everybody pause for a thought. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what I said. You know, it's one thing when you are peddling, you know, these sort of large-scale conspiracy theories, whether it's about, you know, Hillary being a demon or 9/11 or, you know, some of, you know, global financial conspiracy theories and things like that. You know, the targets of those theories are these larger-than-life people, these larger-than-life figures, these larger-than-life institutions. You're dealing with larger-than-life topics. Newtown was a very different thing. The targets of these theories were grieving parents who were being called crisis actors, you know. And the other thing that just, I mean, obviously that's just morally repugnant, but the reason it's really fucking stupid to go after grieving parents is because those are the people on this planet who have nothing left to lose. They got nothing left to lose. So they'll come after you hard. They don't give a fuck, you know. And so that's why he's, you know, staring down, you know, I mean, could be tens of millions of dollars in damage.
Well, see, that is appropriate. Like to me, the way to handle this was that way. You don't pull them off of YouTube. You don't pull them.
No, you don't pull them off the air. You handle it like if he broke the law.
But what's happening now? The lawsuit. That's it. I'm all for that. 100%. 100%. That's how you deal with it, because that's not fucking with freedom of speech, while at the same time holding you accountable.
Right. It's also it's not implicating tens of thousands of other people who didn't do anything wrong in, you know, whatever actions you're going to take against Alex Jones.
Right. It's if what you said, look, I mean, there are ways to deal with speech that really truly crosses lines that we as a society have agreed upon. If you're saying things that are libelous, that are defamatory, that are threatening, that are menacing, these things can all be dealt with in a court, not by tech oligarchs. That is not the way to deal with it, because they're going to come for you. And if you're on the left, they already have come for us. And if you're on the left and you supported that action against Jones, well, you have no one to blame but yourself for some of your favorite people online not being able to make a living now, because once YouTube saw they could do this to Jones, they said, well, maybe we don't ban everybody. Maybe we just bury them under the algorithm so nobody gets directed to their sites. You know,
right.
It all started with Jones.
Yeah, right. Until that happened. I mean, that happened right before the adpocalypse, as they called it.
Yeah.
You know, that followed. Where
once they saw they could get away with that, then they just kept going. Like now it's just assumed that these platforms can demonetize, shadow ban, straight out ban. It's just it's definitely the frog in the pot of water. You remember there was a vigorous debate around this at first, and now it's, did you see who got pulled off now? Everyone came to accept it. They just accepted it as normal.
All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers us for this evening. Thank you guys very much for watching. Go to patreon.com/do-dissidents to support this program. We just snuck in this second live stream. Here, I'll put this in the chat, and I'll put our Substack in the chat as well. This will be clipped for YouTube, and we will have a couple different segments on this later. It'll also be available to watch in its entirety right after we wrap here. Thank you guys very much for watching. Thanks for our podcast listeners for listening. I should probably put this up on the audio feed later this week. But thank you guys very much for this little impromptu stream. This was fun. Thanks very much. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.